maximum news, or I guess until the middle of March, it's probably going to be, it should probably be more appropriately titled The Last of Us Recap with Other News Afterwards show, which isn't necessarily a problem. I hope you guys will join on the bandwagon with us. We're going to get to that, of course, in just a second. But first, I figure I might as well introduce my co-host, Syb. What's happening, man?
Hello. And I got to say, Amazon's doing a lot better than HBO right now.
Why's that?
Well, I think most everybody is extraordinarily happy with The Last of Us, and really satisfied with how it's being handled and attention to detail. All of those things are good, and it's very healthy. Meanwhile, HBO has put out Velma, and pretty much everybody has united, which is really weird.
Syb,
the hatred of that.
Syb, I'm going to stop you right there. Last of Us and Velma are both produced by HBO.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
Why am I thinking Amazon? I'm thinking Amazon because of the stupid Lord of the Rings show.
Well, you can I'm actually watching HBO through my Amazon service, but it's because I purchased HBO through Amazon. Interesting that you bring that up. But yeah,
Well, let me just alter the joke a little bit.
Sure.
How does this go? Well, I'm glad they're doing so good with, Last of Us. It seems to be doing well because that Velma show is, I guess you got to have two opposing weights on either end of the teeter-totter, right?
Yes. Perfectly balanced as everything should be.
Yes, perfectly balanced as everything should be.
Thank you, Thanos. Yeah. So did you happen to watch The Last of Us yet?
No, because I assumed for the last 3 weeks, and I don't know why, that it was on Amazon.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, no, you can get it.
The dumb thing is that I have a free subscription to HBO for the next couple months, and I haven't even turned it on because I didn't think there was anything good there.
Yeah. Oh, well,
so,
come on.
I think I'll try and catch up with you in the show.
Yes. I think you absolutely should. So I'm going to get into my spoiler-free thoughts of episode 2, I know Syb knows the events of the games, but, there are certain things that are changed in the TV show that I'm sure Syb would prefer to not know anything about. So I literally finished watching episode 2, last week, less than an hour before we started recording, and that's what it's going to be like for the foreseeable future. So these are just my initial thoughts. They're not as well scripted as I would like to be, but, there's value in them being raw. So where the first episode of The Last of Us HBO last week was sort of like a 9 out of 10 on the whole, with 10 out of 10 moments sprinkled throughout, episode 2 is like a 7 out of 10 with 8 out of 10 and 9 out of 10 moments. So, there are some people that just have a heart attack when you say that something is a 7 out of 10 online. 7 out of 10 is good. For me, 8 out of 10 is great. 9 out of 10 is amazing. So on the whole, the episode's very good. There are a couple of negatives, which I will get to, but let's start off with positive stuff. So the opening of the episode is not from the original game, but it's actually really neat. It gives greater context to the outbreak of the cordyceps infection, and it's actually
I think that's an important thing that they add. That's one of those things where I was like, I hope they add a little bit more to it, because it does help the build out the world a little bit more, because you discover those things via certain types of gameplay that don't always translate that well to film. So I think that's a good idea.
Yes, and they do a wonderful job of that, and it seems like that's what they're going to be doing for the rest of the show. If the first 2 episodes are any indication, what they did with the Watch and the first episode, and a couple of other things I won't mention. And then we finally, after episode 1, the thing that I was most curious about is seeing the interaction between Joel and Ellie, as well as getting more from Bella Ramsey's interpretation of the character. We do get more of that in this episode. We don't get as much of it as I would have liked. But on the whole, the stuff that we did see was good. It was encouraging. I will say, for Bella Ramsey, I'm not completely sold on her yet, but she does have some moments in this episode that do get to that trademark Ellie charm. But, there's still a little bit of doubt as to whether or not she's going to be able to carry that for the entire show. Mm-hmm. But everything that I saw, there was nothing that I saw in this episode that discouraged me. Let's just say that. So I'm nearly there. And the stuff that she does with Joel, while it's still kind of minimal, it's still the beginning of the series. I'm sure we'll get more of that as we go along. The stuff that we do get is fine. I do hope that they pick up the pace for the next few episodes, and I have very little doubt that they will. Now, just a few of the negatives. So, the section of the game that they're covering in this episode, I got to give them a little bit of credit. It's the least interesting part of the game for me. Mm-hmm. I cherish the game inside and out, but it's the section of the game that I wish I could skip the most. The fact that they were able to take that section and make it enjoyable at all is it deserves praise. Kudos to NieR for doing that. The guy who made and directed the first and second games, he directed this episode and he did a really damn good job. So kudos to that. Unfortunately, though, because it is the least interesting part of the game, there were elements of that carried over into the episode a little bit. So because that section of the game is just a lot of gameplay, there are parts of the episode that do feel a little bit strung out, that do feel a little bit like there's some cheesy zombie movie type moments in the episode. But those types of things, even though they're there, they're not enough to make me like, oh my God, I hate watching this. Like, you get past them soon enough, and then you get onto the good stuff. And then finally, as for the way that the episode ends, it's excellent. It brings you back to sort of those 9 out of 10 and 10 out of 10 moments from the first episode. It's like, okay, everything's fine. They know what they're doing. I can't wait for episode 3 to come along. And I know what's going to happen in episode 3. If you know the game, it's not a spoiler. There's going to be a character named Bill. And I'm very, very curious to see how they handle him. I'm very excited. My level of excitement for next week is about the same as my excitement was for the previous week. So 2 episodes down so far, 2 positive reviews. Syb, how do my words, how do you, does it make you any more encouraged to check it out? What's your reaction?
Just they're handling it really well, and that's a good sign. It means that the directors on the show are kind of keyed into that, and I suspect that for a long time I kind of figured this was coming as more and more people who obviously grew up playing games gets into positions where they understand the gaming culture. You see more and more of this kind of thing where it's like, oh, hey, look, it's somebody who actually understands what's going on and doesn't translate it through a non-gaming lens of like Hollywood, which is one of the weirdest things you could possibly do. So yeah, just overall though, again, I mean that's a good sign, and I'm looking forward to hopefully more positivity. And now that I know that it's on the other service provider, I'll check it out there.
Yeah,
I don't know how I missed that.
I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on it, because I knew you and I were a little bit pessimistic as to how this was going to turn out. I know you were.
I've been such a pessimist for the last 2 years. It's been pretty bad.
Yeah, and I get it, but I'd be shocked if you didn't at least like it, because I've yet to find somebody online that doesn't at least like it. So, all right. So that was my review for episode 2, ladies and gentlemen. Did you have a chance to watch it yet? Please let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. If you agree or disagree with anything that I say, and leave a comment telling Syb to get on it, so that way we can talk about it. All right. Speaking of TV adaptations of gaming shows, Saib, or gaming shows, video games. Saib, when we did when I did my review of the first episode of The Last of Us last week, I directed a whole bunch of people from my main channel over here. And in the comment section, people left their thoughts. But on top of that, there was a few people asking to hear my thoughts on NieR Automata, the anime. And the main reason why is because, if any of you have been following me, you know that my shtick on my main channel is to seek out quote-unquote profound video games. And I'm on record for saying that the video game NieR Automata has the most profound story ever told in a video game. I'm not saying it's the best story, but it's the most profound story. And profound sort of takes into account like the way the story is told, the structure of the story, the themes of the story. It focuses heavily on existentialism. There's nothing else like it. And so naturally, people have been wanting to hear my thoughts on the show. Well, there's only 3 episodes out so far. I will give my thoughts on each of them individually. But first of all, I'll just give my general impression, okay? It's fine. It's good. I like it. It's unfortunately, though, because of the way the first 3 episodes are structured, it's a little bit too early to tell how I truly feel about all of them. Because it seems to me that the way that they're structuring the anime is that the quality of those episodes will be determined by episodes that happen later on. So it's sort of like I can envision 2 scenarios in my head. I don't know, Saib, if you've ever watched Serial Experiments Lain or Techno Lies. Those are 2 other animes. The quality of those series is heavily contingent on episodes that happen later on. With Serial Experiments Lain, the later episodes are so good that they retroactively make the first episodes even better. But then with Techno Lies, you kind of had to sit through the first few episodes to get to the really good stuff at the end, and it doesn't retroactively make the first few episodes good. So what I'm hoping happens here is that NieR Automata will have future episodes that elevate the first 2 episodes beyond what I truly feel about them right now, which is they're okay to good. So for the first episode, it's basically 95% of it is just a shot-for-shot remake of the opening of the game. And that's fine, because the opening of the game is great, but it's like you kind of want a little bit more beyond that, right? I will say, though, I am a little bit pissed that they got rid of the opening quote from the game. I just think, and people who have played the game know what I'm talking about, the opening quote from that game is just such a perfect encapsulation of everything about that, everything that the game is about, and the fact that they took it out from the beginning and sort of, I don't want to say without spoiling it, they got rid of it, and I'm pissed about it. Let's just say that. The second episode was a little bit better, still a 7 out of 10. It's where it starts to lay the seeds for what NieR Automata is about, which is about robots and consciousness and, the difference between that and android consciousness and human consciousness. And then you start to get some of the Yoko Taro flavor of the way that he likes to tell his stories. Again, though, it's like, is that artistic style going to pay off, or is it just going to come off as pretentious as more episodes go along? Hopefully it's not like that, and it actually does pay off. The third episode, though, is great. It has great character moments. It has the signature Yoko Taro humor, and there's a lot of thrilling action there. And, oh, by the way, very, very, I'm not going to say what it is, but just slight spoiler. There's a reference to the first NieR. So not NieR Automata, but NieR Replicant or NieR Gestalt, if you want to be an OG about it. There's a little reference to it in NieR Automata, and it's awesome. I loved it. So if every episode of NieR Automata going forward can be like episode 3, I think we're in for a really great series. But we'll have to see. I am very excited to see the next episode, about as excited as I am for episode 3 of The Last of Us. And then finally, there are post-credit segments for NieR Automata, and I don't consider this a spoiler. The post-credit segments it's like a puppet show where they reenact one of the 26 endings that you can get from the video game. And yes, there are 26 endings in the game. And it's very charming. So overall, 7 to an 8 out of 10. It could go lower, it could go higher. We'll see. Generally, I'm happy so far. Side, have you had a chance to watch it yet?
So yeah, I've been checking it out with, and so has Mooney.
Okay.
And right now, I think basically everything you said, with the addition of, I think they really got the emotionality done right, and that's looking like really good. But it'll take a little bit before we're like 100% sure on it. And also, I really need to, I really need to get, I really need to watch it in the dub, because the tone and like that's going to be kind of big. And some people say, oh, dubs aren't good. It's like, well, depends.
It
right?
depends.
It really does depend. Some of the dubs are directed by the actual person, one of the key directors of the original series. And we had this there are some really keen big name animes that have done that in the past, where the guy who's the director also happens to speak English really, really well, and he knows the English voice cast really, really well, and he ends up being heavily involved in that process. One of the best examples of that is probably Kill la Kill. So yeah, it really does depend, and I need that, because like it's otherwise it's just I have to constantly interrupt the I have to interrupt things and read what they're saying, and that's not always conducive to good watching.
Yeah,
it can be really rough times.
Yeah, sometimes I prefer like the sub if the nature of the anime is that there's certain emotions that are conveyed in the original language that you don't really get with the dub. But other times I just prefer the dub, because it's just the way that my brain works. So I'm right there with you.
It's just a matter of like how to how you take it in, and emotionality is really important. So is the translation too, right? And there are, and I will certainly point this out, that there are a lot of anime shows that have they come over for dubbing, and instead of sticking with the the translation that the studio perhaps provided already, because they're already in a deal to like have the manga or something translated over.
Yeah.
Instead of having that, there's creative translating. I cannot emphasize how much I despise that terminology, creative translating, where it's like, well, he meant to say this, but we didn't like the cultural implication of this, so we're going to change what he said to be something completely different that doesn't even fit the scene. So of course there's those problems, but but there are times where again a really good translator can go, this is what is being said here, and that translation comes off better than trying to read it in that context. And so there's some editing work, and when it's done right, it's done just super well. And again, like Kill la Kill is one of the best examples of how to do this right, because they incorporated all of the very complex Japanese wording, how they structure their what's it called, the images. There's two words for it.
Hiragana and katakana.
Yeah, the katakana and I can't remember
the kanji.
Which of those. Yeah, I can't remember which of those is primarily used in Kill la Kill. So please forget me. But that's really important, because it's giving you more information than just a single word, and so those things like they have to be really gone into, and so that's really great. But like I said, so far it looks really solid with what they've got so far, and I'm kind of happy with where they're at the moment, and fingers crossed that we get a little bit more of that down the road.
Yeah, well,
that would be a good thing.
Yeah, there's tons of characters they still have to get to. In episode 3, they get to the first series of major antagonists, but there's a whole lot of other stuff to get to after that. So, yeah, good reason to be optimistic. And by the way, one thing I forgot to mention. and I can't believe I forgot to mention this. Thank God they kept the music, because there is no topping. The music from NieR Automata and the first NieR is some of the greatest music ever produced for video games, period. I'm actually one of the people that actually prefers the music from the first NieR over Automata, but just by a slight margin. They're both legendary, and hearing all the key tracks that we listened to 100 times while playing the game in the anime, it warms the heart. It really, really does. I'm sure you agree, right, Seb?
Yeah, in the words of Giguk. Oh, this is main monitor stuff. Yeah,
Gigek? Who's Gigek?
Giguk is a very famous anime reviewer.
Oh, okay. Forgive me. I just started.
He's married to Sidesnap, who is possibly one of the best literal manifestations of a tsundere is possible. It's great. They're such a wonderful couple. I love them.
Yeah, maybe my fiance might know about him. She's the one that's gotten me into anime for the past year and a half, and I'm sure at some point I'll find out who those people really are. So, guys, those are our thoughts on NieR Automata. Again, it's a great time to be a fan of video games, because adaptations are finally coming out that seem to really be universally taking the source material seriously and adapting them really well. Have you happened to watch the NieR Automata anime yet? Please let us know your thoughts on that in the comment section below. All right, now, Syb, I'm feeling a little bit foolish. I feel like we should have saved our reviews for NieR and The Last of Us for the end of the show, because that way we can end on a positive note. But now we got two somewhat negative stories. So I apologize. Maybe we just need to reiterate why you should go and watch those TV shows at the end. Let's start with the Microsoft thing. So, Syb, why don't you take the lead on this? It's a real crap show, unfortunately.
Well, just to add some general positivity into this story.
Okay.
We do have the and just tying it in with the previous thing. We do have, again, slightly more news on the Fallout TV show. And
we do. Okay.
Yeah, it's not big and it's mostly speculative, but there's a lot of people who are saying this is actually going to be pretty good. That's what fans of the Fallout series have said that are tied to this show.
And
so they know it.
And do we know why they're saying that?
No, we don't have any clue, but they're saying it's going to be good. They're nailing everything that's important to a Fallout series. And because it's not necessarily tied, and we talked about this, I can't remember if we talked about this last week or the week before, but I think I mentioned it before, where the importance of the Fallout TV show and how it differs a little bit from Halo and Last of Us and all of those other things is that each game is, for the most part, a completely different story.
Yeah.
It takes place in the same universe, sometimes has crossover characters, but is not directly the same thing, right?
Yeah.
It is different than those things because it doesn't have one continuous story. There's not one continuous hero or one continuous character that moves through the entire universe other than Dogmeat, the Mysterious Stranger, and for the most part, Harold.
And some of the factions.
And the factions are the real identity of the game. But even then, you don't always have the same focus on the same various groups of factions.
Right.
So with that said, I mean, it's looking good. It feels like they're really trying, and so that's really good. Now on to the
just very quickly, who's making it? Like what studio?
Well, I don't want to screw this up this time, but I do believe that it is Amazon.
Yeah, I think it's Amazon too.
Yeah, it's Amazon.
Well, I mean, like, there's some stuff that they produce. Yeah,
there is some stuff. The good news is that Todd Howard and the director basically was like, yeah, we don't need to haggle about this. We want to make the best show possible, and then they went into it with with that
Attitude.
understanding in mind, and they were huge fans of the game. As far as I understand, the director and a lot of the producers are actually like longtime fans of the series, so they're people who want to get it right.
Yeah, they're people that won't be able to sleep at night if they mess it up.
Yeah, and that's a big difference for the Lord of the Ring one, because the Lord of the Ring people went into their show recording, stating on the record that, you know, the previous work was bad and evil and needed to be completely redone in their image. Which,
Okay.
I mean, I seem to remember the devil saying that a long time ago, but that's besides the point. Anyways,
well, Syb was around since the time of the devil, but please go on.
Yeah. So big thing here with Microsoft, they have laid off 10,000 employees, and everybody is in shock and horror and very sad about this. Until, of course, I remind you that less than a year and a half ago, they hired around 75,000 employees. And that even a cut from that is pretty standard in a lot of industries. Yeah. After you you bring in a ton of people all at once, an enormous amount of people into a whole bunch of different areas, a whole bunch of different categories. Obviously, after about a year, you're going to have some cuts to do because the chances of everybody being, 100%, or the chance that you overhired for particular roles is going to be quite high. That's not to insult. Obviously, it's not to insult all the people who got laid off. That's not also to say that they all deserve to get laid off because of their own, it was their own fault and whatever. That's to say that sometimes those positions get cut. And a lot of these people also have a significant umbrella to go out and find new jobs. Also, some of these jobs are stereotypically not seasonal, but like contractual for a period of time. And again, now those aren't the huge majorities. Obviously, in a lot of these cases, there were people who just laid off because Microsoft is fearing a major recession worldwide kicking off this year. It's been, not a great start to the year, and this is definitely going to add to the bad in that sense. And I have to say that knowing that, obviously, we look at that situation, we look at the poor people that have been pulled into this mess, and we say, yes, we are really sorry that this has happened. That's, for the most part, unfair and kind of sucks, and it has more to do than with just a single company, right? And you kind of feel bad for that. Then there are some companies like 343 that severely bombed the Halo game. Whether, a lot of them have been laid off. Those aren't new hires. Those are people that have been around for a long time, and they all got a big chunk of them got the boot.
Yeah.
And there has been some internet drama on them calling out the bosses at Microsoft, saying this was all your guys' fault.
Yeah.
And so on and so on. So poorly managed, poorly this, poor that, poor this. And I do have to say that I don't believe that to its face, because the hype that 343 was building around the game leading up to its release was way overshot. Not nearly as overblown as Cyberpunk was, but it was severely overhyped.
Yeah, spiritual reboot. It's going to be a return to the glory of Halo. Yeah.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. And the fact that, like, at some point when if your boss shows up every day, and to be fair, I was really young and I had a job making sandwiches at a thing. It was a little community of thing. And I had two people. One person was the morning shift person. The other person was the evening shift person. And I'm this like teenager just trying to, do a first job. Person comes in the morning, says, "Hey, I want you to butter the bread on the sandwiches, because you have to have something that seals the sandwiches shut. So you got to have butter on both sides. and you got to be able to seal in the meat and the sandwich and the lettuce and all that kind of stuff. And then the person in the afternoon shift would come in, get mad at me because the night before they had told me that, hey, you have to not make these sandwiches with butter because everybody complains about what, that there's butter in their sandwich. They have butter in the little packets. That's what the butter's for. Don't do this. And for about a week and a half, I tried, whilst pulling out my hair, to make these two people happy, including rotating all of the sandwiches at just before the shift changeover. There was about 15 minutes where neither one of them were in the building, and I would rush, take all the sandwiches that were there, put them in a little corner in the fridge, and then pull out different sandwiches and put those out in the thing so that both of them would be happy, which was mind-pulling. But at some point, like what I did there, that's what Microsoft is telling you every single day. Hey, change this about the main campaign. Hey, do that about the main campaign. Hey, let's reboot that. At some point, you just have to quit. If that's really what was happening, and the leadership at Microsoft was causing this much of a problem, you had to just either walk away or get noisy about it. Neither of those things happened because the game was basically a complete failure. So there's a lot of blame to go around, but trying to say that it was all on leadership, I don't think that's a healthy, especially not coming from team leads.
It does seem like there's a lot of blame to go around.
Yeah. And again, team leads, I'm tired of team leads saying, oh yeah, it's all my boss's fault. You're the team lead. Either you walk up to your boss and say, hey, what you're trying to do here is causing us stress and causing us to not get work done and making it so that we're not going to have a finished product. You saw what happened with Cyberpunk. You saw what happened with all these other games. You saw what happened with, what's another good example? The Warcraft 3 Reforged.
Yep.
Or refunded, as we should say. You gotta put your feet down, say no. And if you get fired for saying, hey, boss, I don't think what you're doing here makes much sense, it's like you're gonna get a nice like firing package, because they can't just like boot you out of the door, right? Like you're team lead, right? Yeah. And you're gonna be able to like call it out. Like, and again, I'm not saying that it's all their fault. Could just as well have been a whole bunch of idiots at Microsoft, walking in and ordering this, that, and the other thing and never, making up their minds. And again, that kind of stuff happens. But at some point, it's a pretty lucrative market for game developers right now. You should probably have either moved on or stuck to your guns on something.
Yeah.
Like, and so that's kind of what's happening there. And why do I say this? Why do I bring that into? It's to say that the total firings was not more than 5% of the employees at Microsoft.
Yeah.
Them doing the layoffs after such a huge hiring, I think a lot of people are making more out of this as a whole than it should be. Should companies obviously be more invested in retention and training better people for longer periods of time, and maybe going, hey guys, we got to find out a way to like tighten our belts, and coming up with some interesting solutions for that in troubled times. Yes to all of those things. I think that's all really important. But I think in particular, this had some people throwing up their hands and going, it's the end of the world for Microsoft. And I'm looking at it and going, no, it's just normal business practices.
Yeah.
It's not that weird to have a whole bunch of people get fired when after you finish the initial training and the official a year of examining what they were doing. And I do know that in at least one case there was somebody who was bragging that they were basically getting away with doing no work at all.
Oh,
and
wow.
That they were really happy with taking Microsoft for a ride, and as soon as they got fired, it's, oh no, I'm a victim again. Oh no, now I get to complain and hey, people give me money. Oh, I hate people who do that.
Yeah.
Mooney and I, we work for the last 5 years. Our average work week through 7 to 9 months of the year was an average of 100 hours a week.
Oh my God.
For 9 months out of the year at minimum, sometimes more, sometimes closer to 11 months.
Yeah.
I think people need to just work a little bit harder. And also, and again, I'll say this as somebody who should have done this years and years beforehand, don't take garbage from your boss. If your boss isn't capable of being a good leader and is leading you and your company towards a position of failure, get out and find a better position somewhere else. Trust me, you'll have people begging you to work if you can prove that you're capable of doing so and capable of making people money. If you can make yourself money on your own, go do that too. Like, there's no point in working for somebody else if you can do something better. And again, right now, the golden age of indie video games is literally right now. Indie studios are pumping out great hits. Small companies, big old shout out to a bunch of devs that I regularly work with, do light collabs with, do light chats with, everything in between. Some of them moved into making a niche video game for a small group of people. They have like 2,000 supporters on Patreon, and they're making twice as much as they were at their previous job. So you can do it. There's lots of things and lots of golden opportunities for you. It's not that hard. Just get off your keister and work at it.
Yeah. Yeah, the main story here, I don't think, is necessarily even though it sucks.
And it does.
It's not the 10,000 jobs. It's more so just the way that it was specifically affecting 343. And even with them, it's like, well, who are the people that got laid off? It's the people that were working on the single player stuff.
Yeah. Well, multiplayer was actually pretty decent. Like, there were some issues, obviously, but it was a single player that I would say dropped the ball. And again, you have team leads, leadership to blame for that. And if one of those people didn't course correct, or like say we need to course correct, or like we're all just going to move on to find better work because this is going to just be an absolute gong show, then that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
And nobody did that.
Yeah. Hopefully, following these layoffs, the momentum for Halo Infinite's multiplayer can continue to pick up, because it has been, with the release of Forge and the amazing Forge creations that people have been making. They're just off the chain. Hopefully that continues. I don't know if it will. Like, the core gameplay for Halo Infinite's multiplayer is fantastic, but it's just a matter of whether or not they can capture the community spirit and the custom game fun that Halo 3 and Halo Reach were famous for. Well, that's it for that story. Let's move on to the final story. Syb, sometimes funerals are horrible things, but they do have a positive element in that they can create some closure. And we do know when a certain funeral will be taking place for our beloved Marvel's Avengers. Now,
I thought this was for Mr. Scruffles. We were doing that whole Viking longboat burial.
Mr. Scruffles died?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, okay. Sorry. I had the wrong thing. Right. Marvel's Avengers, let me just check my notes here, was a
live
pretty
service.
Terrible live service game that came out a couple of months, a year ago, something like that.
It came out in August of 2020, so less than 3 years ago. Yeah, but get this, even though it came out less than 3 years ago, pretty soon you're not going to be able to buy it, at least digitally. So it was announced by Crystal Dynamics, the people that made Marvel's Avengers, that on September 30th of this year, 2023, the game will be completely delisted from all online stores, and all support for the game will end. You can still buy physical copies of the game, although I'm not really sure why you want to do so, unless you're just trying to complete a collection of PS5 or PS4 games or Xbox, whatever. Let's see. credits, obviously some people were just wondering, the few people that are still playing this game, how this will affect people that spent money on the game. Apparently credits that have been purchased will be transformed into online in-game resources, and that will be starting on March the 31st. And on that same day as well, all of the cosmetic items, all the predatory stuff that Crystal Dynamics tried to sap money from people's pockets for, all that will be made free. People can get whatever they want. So I guess that's good, but that's still not going to fix the fact that the core of the game was just mediocre to okay. Like, from what I understand, I never played the game. There is some decent gameplay to be had here and there, but after a few hours, it just gets repetitive, button mashing, killing the same hordes of enemies over and over again, and certain characters feeling like other characters. I think it was like Hawkeye and the Winter Soldier had basically the same movesets. But anyways, so there have been, following this announcement, some people who worked on the game sort of speaking out on why it sort of fell apart. Well, we all knew, like, live service, that's part of the reason. But it also has to do with inept studio management and Marvel Games bureaucracy, apparently, which sucks. So, I mean, rest in pieces, I guess. You know what, Syb? I thought of a positive way to end this story and by proxy the podcast. Marvel's Avengers was created by Crystal Dynamics. In Crystal Dynamics, they did make Legacy of Kain, which probably the best dialogue in the history of a video game, in my opinion, is that series. And they did Tomb Raider, of course, and the first Tomb Raider reboot, which came out in 2013. If The Last of Us and Grand Theft Auto 5 didn't come out that year, it probably would have won all the Game of the Year awards. And we know that a new Tomb Raider game is coming out, and they are putting out the feelers for a Legacy of Kain revival. Like they did that survey a couple of months ago where they're asking, hey, what would you guys like to see from a new Legacy of Kain game? And if you're a fan of Legacy of Kain, you haven't filled out that survey, you better damn well do it before I come over there and force the paper in your face. So the future looks bright for Crystal Dynamics, especially because they're no longer under Square Enix. They're under Embracer. So slight improvement. Syb, any thoughts on this? Do you remember when the game came out? Like, I can't believe it's less than 3 years ago.
Yeah, I remember it coming out, and I remember it being incredibly underwhelming, and I remember all of the fanboy BS that you hear from these people who are like, hey, I'm going to throw $800 at this game this month because I want to, huh? And you go, please don't. Please stop funding this live service bull. At least with Genshin Impact, you have them putting in just so much content that most people just can't can barely keep up with the game as far as the story and the all the stuff that you can do when it goes. There's something to be said for that, where they invest, the most into that game than any other game on the market.
Yeah.
They're also making like 3 times that, but that's yeah.
Yeah.
But that was never the thing with this. It was
nothing was good.
We made a bunch of live servicey stuff. We crammed it into this Avengers thing, and then we didn't ever really give you what you wanted, and it was just really kind of garbage, and it was just kind of slapped together. And hey, throw an unlimited amount of money at this.
And what came of it? Yeah, it's
garbage, and I'm glad it's gone. And I think probably a Viking funeral for that's probably actually a little bit better than one for Pet Cricket. So yeah, probably better. Probably better to pile the servers in there, light it on fire, and let the ocean take it.
And hopefully some other studio will pick up the license in the future and do something with it. Maybe something along the lines of an actually successful Marvel game, like Spider-Man, and what I'm anticipating will be Wolverine. By the way, if you guys want a good... It's not precisely Avengers, but close enough. If you want a good Avengers-type game like that, pick up Lego Marvel Superheroes. That is a great game where you can play as more than just a few of the Avengers. You can play as virtually every character in the Marvel roster. You can play as Galactus if you want in that game, and it's awesome. And I think it might be available on Steam. I got to check that out. I want to play that game again. So it's too bad, but at least the future looks bright for the people over at Crystal Dynamics, and Square Enix can go die with all their NFT crap. So I actually got through that pretty quickly. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Maximum News Show. If you have any thoughts on any of the stuff that we talked about, not just the first two things with NieR and Last of Us, if you have any thoughts on Marvel's Avengers, if you're one of the people that enjoyed it, please let us know in the comments section below. I want to thank Syb, as always, for doing this show, providing his lovely insight. Syb, do you want to tell people about the main channel real quick?
Yeah, check out the Triple S League on the YouTubes, on the Rumbles, and actually, I'm pretty sure we're on Rumble. We're all over the place. We're also on Patreon, Subscribestar, and all that kind of stuff. Thank you for supporting us. It really does make a difference. Lets us get the show out, and we're trying to really bump up our quality this year. We're gonna be doing some lot more camera stuff and some other things for other stuff, and this show will probably stay the way it is though, so don't worry about that. But yeah, join us there, and we've got a ton of guides coming for a whole bunch of games this year, starting with we're gonna probably be live streaming Hogwarts. Yeah, we're probably gonna be live streaming that, so come help us ignore the haters, and yeah, let's go. Let's give it a roll.
Nice. Oh man, I can't wait for Hogwarts. Less than 3 weeks, and you guys, it comes out on the 10th, right?
But there is a 3-day head start from ordering the advanced edition. So if you pick that up the week before, then you get a couple days head start.
Oh, right.
And then so that'll be going out the 7th ish, we hope. But we might be getting an early access copy as well. I don't know if we'll get that final approval there, so we'll see how that goes. But okay. Yeah, we're gonna be making tons of content for it, because there's so many routes, so many paths, so many different choices and directions that you can go with the game. We're gonna try and cover as much as we can, as quickly as we can, and then we're certainly going to be talking about it. We're hoping to also make a ton of guides for it too.
Yeah, hell yeah. What was I just about to say? Oh, yeah. Well, I got Dead Space Remake to keep me busy until Hogwarts comes out, so I think I can wait 3 extra days. And you guys can just find me on all the regular forms of social media, Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and Subscribestar as well, just at Max Derrat. I'll put links to that in the description box below. That's it. Peace out, guys. Go watch Last of Us. Go watch NieR, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Goodbye.